That's insane. Sounded like we just kinda heard the origin of Omegle for a second there. r/pro revenge, a subreddit where OP tricks an internet creep into doing one of the worst things imaginable. And let me just tell you, it is not what you expect. This post is by Little Bitty Pretty One. You want special treatment? I would love to. Once upon the before time in 2015, I worked my way through nursing school as a waitress in a restaurant. This restaurant did not advertise, they prided themselves on word of mouth for their popularity. This is important. I had been there for several years at this point and had proved myself reliable and knowledgeable enough to help train new waiters. Not technically a trainer, but could be relied upon to support new workers once the trainers set them loose. We had one older guy who had just been released. He was a little awkward, little shy, and worried about mistakes. Absolutely expected, and he was great to work with. On the night of our tale, he was in the section next to mine. Easy to keep an eye on and easy to hop in and prop him up when he hit the weeds. This was his first night with his own complete section. Weeds would abound, I was ready. What he wasn't ready for was his first demanding table round of about 6 people, 20 somethings with attitude. He came to me worried and confused. They want XYZ, but I don't think that's on our menu, right? She says we have the ingredients and just make it. That the other location makes it all the time. Yes, I could have taught him to stand his ground, but nerves and first night with your own section isn't the time for this to go over well. So I told him ask the back line and see if they were willing. If not, I would talk to the table. Cooks were fine with it, basically a wrap if I remember correctly, so no problem from our end. This was apparently the cue for the leader of the table to demand something every time he came to the table. As soon as he brought the last requested item, she needed something else. I thought it was possible and had been keeping an eye on him. Seeing his panicked face, I gave him a nod and started checking in on his other tables, slotting them into my own table cycles. Reasons I'm paired with him. This carried on for their entire meal, incredibly needy and demanding his full attention with zero apology or kindness. I made sure to catch him in the back to prepare for possibly getting no tip, but to calm the panic and to remind him I would not be touching the tips from his other tables. Honestly, this poor guy looked like he was about to quit on the spot. This leader was rude and impatient and gave him no space to breathe. I was his emotional support animal at this point, but knowing he was at least twice my age made it even worse for him. The table had come in close to the end of the night and ended up staying past our section's closing, so they were the last table on our side of the restaurant. Perks of closing with a new waiter, getting cut early. That's when he came to me asking how to do an employee discount, and they wanted to use more than one on a single ticket. Was that okay? I was confused. Wait, employee? That's when he shared that she had spent the entire meal berating and making fun of him because 1, she was a trainer at our other location, and 2, he was the worst waiter she had ever seen. No wonder the other location made her special meals, and zero surprise he was such a wreck. On top of that, she was claiming there were multiple birthdays in the group, so free cakes all around, and she wants the birthday song immediately. To say I was livid is saying lava is warm. I was ready to throw hands for this poor man. Instead, I told him to prep the cakes, but don't go out yet. I would get the boss about employee discount. Not needed, we could do it ourselves. But this was such a special case. And I would gather the workers for the birthday song. Managers there were absolutely amazing. We loved each one and all of them had our backs. Very rare in restaurants, so this almost the best part. I gave the front end boss a quick rundown of the table's antics. Remember the word of mouth restaurant mentality? Yeah, boss was not having a restaurant employee acting so cruelly, even if she wasn't his employee. I asked permission for what I wanted to do. He smiled and gave permission as he grabbed the employee numbers given for the discount, which that trainer would have known could not be stacked, and told me he had a boss to boss phone call to make. I then ran to every employee I could grab. Remember, half the restaurant was closing down, so we had several people available, including a dishwasher, and gave them each the fastest explanation of the table and the plan. I then told the poor nerve-wracked server that we were ready to drop cakes. The crowd that arrived to that 6-person tabletop was honestly the largest we had ever had for a birthday song, and I am pretty confident the largest that restaurant will ever have. We served free cakes in front of every seat, and Lita had the most self-satisfied smirk as we all grinned ecstatically and lined up to sing. sing. And oh, did we sing. We all sang that birthday song as loud as possible. Please do recall, they were the last table in the section, and for your imaginings, I should mention this table was in the corner as well. So while we were screaming the birthday song, it was bouncing back from that corner as well, and it was an excruciatingly long song. Their smiles dropped immediately, and hands covered their ears as they jumped with the audio onslaught. I know it hurt my ears, and that pain is something that still makes me smile to this day. We all stood there, giant group, happily screaming our restaurant's special happy birthday song, and it still warms my heart a decade later. More than that, while we were gathering and planning and destroying eardrums, our boss was making phone calls in the office. Yes, he called her restaurant manager and informed them of her behavior. And no, she didn't get stacked employee discounts. She didn't get her discount at all. I know, because I was there when she was handed the phone from my front end manager at the host desk, and when she started to cry, and when she tried to make her excuses for why she shouldn't be fired. But the general manager, one step below owner, since this was a small company with very few locations, had already been called. Her employee number had been shared, and she was done. I'm not psychic. She could have gone back to her home location and convinced someone to hire her back. Anything is possible. But I know how she treated this poor guy. I know how I told the tale to my boss, and I know the quiet rage he so rarely touched when it was rage. I would have almost given up joining in on that screaming song to be able to hear those phone calls. Almost. Just so you know, OP, it was really satisfying to see you helping the new guy. Not a lot of people would do that. What a great post to start off with. I hope the new guy is in a better place now and isn't so stressed by those sort of interactions. This post is by Candid Umpire. First off, the backstory. This took place in the early days of the interwebs around the autumn of 1999 when HTML coded chats became very popular. For you young'uns, these spaces would be considered a pinnacle of free online speech today, as they were 100% unmoderated and they didn't log any personal data or that you registered an account. It was extremely basic to use, as you just had to write what your session screen name was and that was it. So anyone who wanted to be a creep, abusive, or toxic could do this without any real life consequence, which led to a lot of unwanted contacts. Their MO was basically to use the whisper function, aka old school DM where you still wrote in the group chat but only the recipient could see it. Especially girls and young women were targeted, and although these chats didn't support any images, it was pretty common to exchange email addresses to keep in touch, and lo and behold, the low pixel dick pic was received. This meant that we users needed to figure out ways to self-moderate the chats. The most common way to protect ourselves was to create online communities on a separate website, often using the name of the particular chat room where you hung out. Ours was named The Attic, for example. As this was before the use of registration, a membership would be granted if you were active and endorsed by another member. We had member lists containing our nicknames, a bulletin where we warned about known creeps, lists on how to behave, early netiquette, and other ways to support each other. An example on how we could make a creep leave the chat was to coordinate in the chat and send hundreds of whisper messages using Control-V, flooding their screen with walls of repetitive text that only they could see. 95% of the creeps gave up as their connection would suffer. Our attic was known as the safest place among these chats. Some creeps, though, were a bit more slippery and still managed to trick victims to share personal info, so it was a constant battle to come up with new, different, and often very creative and funny ways to combat these creeps. Now, let me present the actors in this story. I, M20, met my then girlfriend F21 through a physical meetup that was organized by this specific community. We would meet up once or twice a year, traveling from all over the country just to meet up and then hang around for a weekend, partying or doing fun stuff at amusement parks or other places. My girlfriend was one of the first members in this community and was a well-known user in the chat for being really tough and creative when dealing with creeps. A standing joke was that she was more evil than the devil. Now for the pro-revenge part. The creep in question, let's call him Farmer Bob, was one of the creeps who was a bit slippery. He managed to become a member without any of us suspecting a thing. His creepiness was very low-key, and only after some of the younger members started to report getting emails and unwanted messages me and my girlfriend decided to act. We started out by her pretending to be a naive and new user, and we managed to get him interested. After some back and forth, we managed to get some basic info about him and even some personal info. For example, we learnt that he was living in the rural areas of the country, and he claimed to be wealthy as he owned a cattle farm, hence Farmer Bob. We soon realized that he was extremely stupid, seeming to be lacking in both social skills and basic education. He bragged about always wearing wooden shoes and how the females love to be fucked by him while wearing them. That's insane. After some more back and forth, my girlfriend got bored and decided to just fuck it, let's just go all in. So my girlfriend pretended to be interested in maybe hooking up, but only if he could offer some cocaine, as it always made her super horny. To our surprise, he took the bait and that he couldn't afford it, despite bragging about being a wealthy cattle farmer just an hour earlier. He also slipped by telling her that his parents would be out of town the coming weekend. Dude literally forgot that he had just claimed to be the owner of the bloody farm. Anyway, girlfriend felt that she wanted to just exaggerate the crap out of him and wrote something like, "But Farmer Bob, didn't you know that if you mix 3 parts baking soda with 1 part vanilla sugar, then you would get a rush equal to a cocaine rush but with a nice aftertaste? It's also way cheaper." We thought this was so over the top that the game would be up and that he would finally realize that girlfriend was just trolling by now. Instead, he had told us that he had forgotten about that DIY white powder trick and thanked girlfriend for reminding him about it. Girlfriend convinced him that he had to be sure to make a batch before she booked a train ticket, and he had to make sure it was of good quality. He promised her that he would make a batch right away and try it out later that evening, and we logged out. Fast forward a couple of days, believing him to have realized the girlfriend had been trolling him, we got an email written in all caps. It was something like, "You made my nose bleed, you MF bitch! I had to visit a clinic because of you," etc. He was so furious and accused her of tricking him. No shit, Sherlock. But wait, my fellow viewers, that wasn't even the best part. We not only managed to somehow convince him that he must have gotten the mix wrong, we made an outlandish claim that she used this DIY nose candy all the time in her side gig, which was to produce and star in German amateur adult film content that she sold to tourists from all over Europe. To prove this, we recorded an extremely stupid and blatant obvious fake trailer for our big hit. My girlfriend's younger brother asked for him and his friend to star in it. So the scene is her bed, her brother, pretending to be random dude, sitting there with his friend laying on his stomach over his lap, both fully dressed, and pretending to be my girlfriend, as he had long curly hair. Using a wooden spatula, well, I think you get the idea, while I stood behind the camera and clapping wet hands to, again, I think you get the idea. To top it off, me and girlfriend shouted German sounding nonsense, and they mimicked their mouths. The quality of the video was horrendous, but the low resolution and frame rate actually created a believable trailer. It was still extremely silly and over the top, and should have been apparently fake to everyone. Not to Farmer Bob though. He was totally convinced this was the genuine thing and begged us to sell him some films. We agreed to do so, but only if he tried the homemade cocaine again. We never heard from him again after that. I'm guessing he finally realized it was all fake. He might have kept creeping in the chat room but using a different name. We never got another report with his email though. And yes, this is a true story. The trailer was unfortunately on an external hard drive that broke 7 years ago. I hope to be able to extract it someday, but until then, you have my word of honor that this is a true story. And I'm so glad you said that, OP, because I really wanted this to be true. There are so many stories on Reddit that are kind of questionable, but this one had so much detail. I so wanted it to be true. I'm so glad that it is. It sounded like we just kind of heard the origin of Omegle for a second there. In saying that, this really didn't seem like something that AI could have possibly written. It was just too good. It was too satisfying. This was r/pro revenge. If you enjoyed this or agreed or disagreed with anything I said, make sure to let me know in the comments below, and also consider going and checking out some other videos on the channel. Also make sure to consider kicking the shit out of the subscribe button underneath me, because 98% of people aren't subscribed and I post new Reddit content every single day.